To me, diversity means inclusion. And when I say that, I mean full inclusion. Because with full inclusion, you're going to get the best quality of output from anything that you're dealing with.
A friend of mine says, you know, Michael, you weren't the first homosexual P&G, but you sure did put a public face to it in the 80s. And it's true, you know, I think that description's right. When I look back on this whole thing, I think, God, you were one crazy queen. What drove me? I'm a fighter, and certainly the time that I've been gay in has not been easy.
Get rid of them! Get rid of them!
Don't make me fight.
If you don't know the history, you're going to repeat, you know the famous line, you're going to repeat it. So I think that that's the key. It's important to understand the struggle because the truth is we're always in the struggle.
Feel the power of this moment and carry the message to the Capitol that we will have full human rights, civil rights for lesbian and gay people. And we will not be denied.
So someone came to me about 6 months ago, and they said, hey, you know, the 25th anniversary of P&G including sexual orientation into its diversity statement's coming, and we'd like to make a big deal of it. I started thinking about it. Over the past 25 years, we've made an incredible amount of progress towards inclusion, but our current times remind us it can be lost very quickly. And so a little light bulb went off in my head. And I thought, well, something had to happen in 1992. Companies just don't make that shift, particularly at that time. I reached out to the LGBT employees and asked, does anybody remember what happened? One person wrote back and said, I think it had something to do with a mouthwash called Paradex. I called our archivist and said, Paradex, what is it? How would it possibly connect? They came back and they said, well, we owned it. We can't find any connection. We don't have much on it at all. So dead end. I emailed back again, who knows something about Paradex? And one guy wrote back and said, a friend of mine may have been involved in it. His name is Michael Chanak.
Oh boy, Cincinnati in the 80s. I got there in 78, conservative. I mean, you know, Cincinnati's roots, yeah, it's really a large cow town.
If the world were coming to an end, you'd want to be in Cincinnati because it wouldn't happen here for 7 years after it happened everywhere else. Progress in moving things forward wasn't something that the community as a whole seemed interested in.
I didn't go to Pride until about 85 because going to Pride was in fact coming out. You know, that's like going to the cotillion, your coming out party, you know.
The parade wound on for hours, a spectacle even Barnum and Bailey might envy.
Because there was so much discrimination and there were so many problems, you had to make friendships and they had to be good friendships. And so I met some of the old timers and got involved in different political groups. I started at P&G in April of 85, and I really was a lab tech in the old-fashioned sense of the word. I was a A&T person, administrative technical. You know, there was a lot of things in the workplace then. Everything you saw, there was a lot of homophobia, there was a lot of sexism, but that's how most people thought then, you know. It was kind of a risky thing being known as gay then. I mean, in those days, it was kind of a friend sort of thing, like an old secret society.
It was isolating because we couldn't talk to each other. There was that fear, there was that isolation, and then the rest of the people you could talk to, there was potential judgment.
I went to that Pride Parade in '86. I ran into my friend Bob McNee. I liked Bob, it was great to see him, it was a celebration. In those days you didn't see gay people, you know what I mean? 200 people in a town the size of Cincinnati, Gay Pride, 1986. These were like your brothers and sisters here. This is old homecoming week. Bob and I kissed, and when the local TV station caught that, it was on Saturday, and it was on Sunday night, and it was even damn on Monday night. And that was really my coming out at work. A lot of people stopped by that morning, about 30 people really, and the message was clearly, you have to be careful, Michael. You have to be careful. After being in that picture with Bob McNee at the Pride thing, I think something snapped. You just finally say to yourself, screw it. I was the authentic Michael. I was going to be who I was. It's either going to take you or you're going to take it. I had made up my mind.
And our guest today is Mike Chanak, noted interviewer and leader in the gay community.
He was willing to be an outlier.
He wanted change for the better. He was willing to put it on the line. He didn't sugarcoat things.
I've often been a target of a lot of nasty stuff over the years. I'm not here to justify or not justify it, but I do feel that I've heard a lot of stuff about a lot of people. And I think it's our own hatred of ourselves that keeps us at each other so much. And we're so smart and yet so willing to believe some very strange things. And sometimes that's disappointing. I guess we all come out, we look for community, and we find out that that's a very difficult concept.
I had my debut in June of '86 on the local TV station, and by the end of the year, I'm transferred to the Paradex brand. Once I understood what they were trying to do, I thought, well, I got something to offer here.
I was 23 years old, and they put me on this tiny little brand called Paradex that was on no one's radar screen. It's a prescription mouthwash, and it was prescribed by dentists, oral surgeons, and periodontists with an FDA indication for gingivitis. We started seeing market share for Paradex really going up in San Francisco and Boston in ways that were kind of out of proportion.
Center for Disease Control says nationwide AIDS has struck 1,641 mostly homosexuals. 644 people have died from the mystery disease.
There have been doctors all over the United States who have, if not actually refused to see patients with AIDS, certainly been very unwilling to do so.
HIV started out as being called GRID, gay-related immune deficiency, and then subsequently it became more generally known as AIDS. But by the time people were aware of what it was too late because there weren't effective remedies then.
Procter & Gamble really found this niche with Paradex being used by people with AIDS. With a pharmaceutical, you have to be able to market with whatever it's indicated for through the FDA. So we didn't have an indication for what was called orcandidiasis. It's basically known as thrush, and many people with AIDS would struggle with that. Quality of life in terms of nutrition, swallowing, just that basic, what made a good day or a bad day, became more prominent.
The cause of the acquired immune deficiency syndrome, or AIDS, is unknown, and there is no known cure.
You had a lifespan of 6 months, maybe 18 months if you were lucky. If you can't eat, you die quicker. That's the bottom line. And if there's something that was better than the current treatments, then it was worth pursuing.
We were doing qualitative research in the form of focus groups and one-on-ones and going to doctors that were prescribing it. It was a way for us to both learn more, but also just be in community and have a conversation with 30 people in a church basement or a community center. They were able to share their experience and how it worked or why it worked. If we are marketing this product, whether indirectly or directly, to people with AIDS and then affecting the larger LGBT community, then we need to hold ourselves to the same standard.
There was this disconnect. They want to do the science, they want to do the marketing, but they didn't quite get, because they weren't gay, the piece that these are people's lives. And these people are right here, even inside of this company. The first mistake you can make when it comes to dealing with queens is you're going to sell them something, you better damn well claim them. I had to say that message many, 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 many times before I finally found a few people that said, you're right.
Michael knocked on my door, came in. He's a very affable guy. He told me that things were not good for the LGBT community in P&G.
There was always these programs about, even then there were programs about inclusion, but those were for Asians, those were for Hispanics. And I pointed out, well, there's no, where are the gays? Where are the lesbians? I went and had these face-to-face talks, and I finally got it out of the guy. Well, we didn't include them. We don't have to include them. We're not going to include them. But That's the kind of atmosphere it was. They were not ready to embrace that. They were not wanting to embrace it.
I didn't realize that he was getting kind of harassed, getting some letters that were not very pleasant.
This one was marked confidential. Open at a time. You have 30 minutes to 1 hour. You had a specific interval of time. And this is the Romans map to heaven, the truthful Bible road to heaven from the book of Romans. Mike, I was told about what some saw on TV. I don't judge you. I know you have torment, but my Lord still heals, and he cares for you. And he will make a way from which there appears no way out. Have faith. And my all-time favorite, with a cartoon, gay but not happy. We understand we've been there, but Jesus has set us free. God makes a way when there is no way. I'd walk down the hall and get called faggot by some folks. That's the work environment.
The issue that Michael was most concerned about was seeing the words sexual orientation right alongside all of the other legal prohibitions against discrimination in the EEO policy statement. P&G wanted to be not only lawful, but doing the right thing. But doing the right thing went beyond the law. Over the next 4 years, we tried. Every year, we'd run it up the flagpole.
I was constantly gathering information, what other companies were doing as far as the gay issue, the impact of gays in the marketplace, what this really represented to them.
The first recommendation we wrote was just to put it in and talk about what others were doing, how diversity was important, and if we were going to say it, we had to live it. I don't think it got all the way to the CEO. I don't think it got out of our department.
To change the policy required a business justification.
Paradex was a prescription mouthwash that allowed us to build a business case that, in my words, it's going to tip the scale. This is what we need to do as a brand, as a business, and absolutely for our own employees.
Paradex was the key, but it wasn't enough.
This is what we were told. Because it was not yet part of the federal mandate, why would we go further? I can see Michael and hear his words now. Tell me again that the EEO has gone up and that we were not included.
How much energy are you going to invest of your soul to work at a company that doesn't support who you are?
P&G was talking about diversity on the one hand and how diversity was the strength of the company. It just wasn't happening.
It wasn't in their mindset. It wasn't in their wheelhouse of reality. It's not that they're hateful people, it's just outside of their sphere.
When you're not gay, you're not a woman, you're not a person of color, you can sit back and say, of course we don't discriminate. And the fact is, they're not in that position to experience discrimination.
P&G wanted to make sure no issues were going to arise. Was there going to be any backlash from our consumers, from other employees, from you name it?
Every attempt, we had to make more of a case.
They were still afraid to do it.
So back we went again.
Year after year
and again
after year
and again.
Which seemed like an eternity.
It was either change or be changed.
In no way was Michael Chanak going to back away.
Months would go by and then simply you'd hear no.
So we had to kick it up a notch.
There's a saying in the Bible about having the faith of a mustard seed. Well, here's my faith. It will change.
I thought that we needed to get our legal ducks in a row. Tom was able to do that.
Lynn said that I think it will carry more weight if the recommendation originates in the legal division. It was important to me. I was a gay man. I had a vested interest. My goal was to get it approved, and the other benefits would flow afterwards, but let's get the thing in place first.
We had to kind of rein in the passion, just stick with the facts.
He had one shot at making this happen.
There are cities and schools that are requiring us not to discriminate on the basis of sexual orientation. From a business standpoint, we're hurting ourselves.
That was the perfect hook to give us more ammunition.
If we're not matching our competitors, we were probably losing some good people that we shouldn't have been losing.
You have to work up that command chain, and you have to have people that believe it's the right thing to do, and there has to be reasons that it's the right thing to do. There has to be stats and figures, and what is the consequence of not doing it?
This is a matter of survival for our community.
It went up through the ranks, it went up quickly. I saw it when it came back, and there were 3 just agreeds, and then the most important 2 letters of all, okay, and it had EOA after it, and that was Mr. Arts, Ed Arts. It was a done deal.
September 15th, 1992, for those of us that had touched it in any way, for those of us that were involved in diversity and inclusion, it was just a thrilling day. There was kind of like a silent smile on our faces that whole day.
You know, you have that moment where you say, oh my God, maybe you didn't really think it was going to happen, and it did, finally, and you just can't, it's just a lot to take in.
Oh my goodness.
Look at you.
Oh, look at you. You look like a teenager. What have you done?
Words matter. Policies do matter. Making something legitimate, legal, taking a stand matters.
We didn't get everything right, and we certainly weren't the first. But what's important is that we got it done. And the lessons that we learned then makes it so much easier to go forward. All of the work that Michael and Ann and Lynn and Tom did just to get those 2 words into the EEO statement, those 2 words had a profound impact. Maybe not in the day after, but in the weeks after, in the months after, in the years after, they were the start of everything.
Proctors come to understand that if you can't bring your whole self to the workplace, you're not going to do an effective job. You're hiding something, you're holding something back. Who you are. It's always important to understand the past because it's instructive, because you learn from the techniques, what the issues were, how they were dealt with. That gives you a clue to the future. The struggle isn't over now.
I didn't think about there being an LGBT community, as I probably should have in hindsight, as being a factor that could make a person either feel welcome or not, safe or not.
When this started, there's no way that they knew what this would turn into. I mean, this created a path for domestic partner benefits. It created a path for transgender benefits. It created a path that, ultimately has led to marriage equality.
We're still on this path, this journey of having an environment where everybody can be who they are and what they want to be. Because it's only by doing that we make progress as a company or as a society.
It's those Michaels of the world that help to create incredible change.
It'll change if you believe it'll change, and you work for it. That's my philosophy.